In the late window on Sunday, a big NFC East rivalry that has taken a bit of a turn here in the last week. Dak Prescott obviously injuring his hamstring against the Atlanta Falcons. He will not face the Philadelphia Eagles, but despite that, Cooper Rush, 5-1 as a Cowboys starter. On top of that, the Eagles, for all of their many successes, have not won at AT&T Stadium since the 2019 season. They will have a chance to right that in the late window. Feels like a perfect opportunity to talk about our on the road segment. It's presented by Honda. Dreams are unstoppable. To preview this matchup, anytime we're going to talk NFC East, why wouldn't we call in our guy, Fox Sports reporter Ralph Vacchiano? Ralph, how we doing, man?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I just got done, take people behind the scenes, working on our Cowboys corner piece that we like to do, checking in on all things Cowboys. I just got done sending you over my answers earlier this afternoon. Long story short, it's feeling a little bleak in Dallas, which has been a theme for the season, obviously. But when the starting quarterback goes down, definitely for a few weeks, maybe for even longer than that, details coming out earlier on Wednesday that his hamstring partially came off of his bone. I'm not a doctor, but that sounds like longer than a 4-week injury. I mean, what else can go wrong for the Dallas Cowboys, Ralph?
Well, that's a dangerous question to ask because sometimes when you think nothing else could possibly be worse, they find a new way to redefine that. So, but yeah, right now this does feel like rock bottom for them. It does feel like a lost season. It feels like one of those years, and every franchise, well, not every franchise, the Chiefs haven't had one in a decade, but most of them will have years where just, the little things start to go wrong, and then before you know it, everything snowballs. And they lose DeMarcus Lawrence, they lose Micah Parsons, they lose Brandon Cooks. Now they lose Dak Prescott. CeeDee Lamb is banged up on top of all of the issues that they had before, the lack of action in the offseason, their bad running game, and on and on and on. So, yeah, it's a mess. And I think I think we were pretty much in agreement on this when we thought about, what could the Cowboys do to salvage their season. It always came down to heroics from Dak Prescott, that he was good enough to maybe sometimes put the team on his shoulders and carry them, and maybe not to the playoffs, but certainly to some wins. Now he's gone for 3-4 more weeks. Who knows at this point? So it's bleak. There's no real way to spin this in a good way for the Cowboys.
Let's at least try to spin it forward for them, because we did disagree on one thing. And clearly this is not what anybody was hoping for in this first matchup between the Eagles and Cowboys. It's typically marquee television, two teams at the top of the NFC East. That's not the case right now. But you and I disagreed on the role that Trey Lance should play going forward. Obviously, I mean, I'm not saying Trey Lance needs to be starting in this game. Cooper Rush has earned the right at that look. But with Dak Prescott going down and the Cowboys offense being a mess anyway, I kind of would like to see Trey Lance have some sort of role. The one thing that he did really well in the preseason was carry the ball. I mean, he is an electric athlete. He can move. Given how poorly everything else is going, I would like to see Mike McCarthy come up with some sort of package for Trey Lance, even if it's just like red zone touches. It really feels to me like you can't do a whole lot worse.
Well, that's certainly fair. If you're advocating, let's change things up on offense, I can't disagree with that. What they've got going right now doesn't work. Certainly in the red zone, if it's certainly something that can be a jolt to their rushing attack, which essentially otherwise doesn't really exist, all that is fair. If you want to put him in for some spot plays, I don't know that I would fully disagree with that. I just think that, I don't want to get a real look at him in an extended role at this point. Maybe Jerry Jones thinks he's the future, but they're not mathematically eliminated just yet. They might be able to stay above water in the NFC East or in the NFC playoff picture with Cooper Rush if they can somehow win a couple of games. It's not ridiculous to think they're not going to win a Super Bowl, but they could probably, get lucky enough and win a couple of games to stay alive. They can't do that, I don't think, with Trey Lance. Once the season's over, once you reach a record where you're like, there's no chance anymore. Maybe it's not mathematical, but we know it's over. then I'd want to see what he's like and what he can do and try to decide on, if he has a role here for the future. But and if you're talking, a drive or two, a play or two here or there, a red zone situation, yeah, why not put him in? Just something to change up the offense to give the Cowboys a little different look.
Yeah, I think there's a time to talk about Trey Lance as a starter, and it's December if they keep this trajectory going. There'll be 2, 3, 4 weeks at the end of the year where you can give Trey Lance a look. I'm with you. Right now, I think it's got to be Cooper Rush, but I don't know, man. If I can get Trey Lance in there for half a dozen plays, even if they're all runs, anything to try to find a spark for what has looked like for most of the year one of the slowest offenses in the NFL.
It couldn't hurt. If he goes in there and he's bad, well, he's as bad running the ball as Rico Dowdle and Ezekiel Elliott were. So who cares? So you tried something. So unless it's a disaster and he starts fumbling the ball, in which case you don't go back to him anymore. So yeah, no, I don't have a problem with that. Give him a shot. Give them a little bit of a different look, some kind of package. If you use him that way, maybe it could work.
Let's talk about the much more impressive side of this matchup. Obviously, Philly has really hit their stride. It feels like not that long ago that Nick Sirianni was in trouble with his own fan base during that win against Cleveland, but you beat up on the Giants and the Bengals. I know that they almost gave that game to Jacksonville away, but if you watched it, even that game, they outplayed the Jags for the vast majority of that. There were some wonky plays. I really think the Eagles are on a tear. They look like a team that's turned a corner since they've gotten healthier. Or am I getting a little too carried away with myself?
No, I think they're really hitting their stride right now. They're playing very, very well. I think some of that has to do with they've sort of remembered who they are. They are relying on their run game a lot more than they did early in the season, certainly than they did last season. And if you listen to, the criticism of fans in Philadelphia, and if you hear kind of the underlying criticism that sometimes comes from players when it sounds like if you read between the lines, they're a little concerned. It always comes back to they're not running the ball enough because that's what they do well with Jalen Hurts. That's what they went and got Saquon Barkley for. Now they're doing it. They can just be bullies, just kind of running through defenses, and that sets up their passing game. And when they're struggling, they're not doing it. They're doing it the opposite way. But Nick Sirianni, he's gotten the message. So is Kellen Moore. He's gotten the message. They're starting to do what they're best at, what their players like to do, and you're seeing an offense that's starting to look a little bit like it did in 2022 when they made the Super Bowl run. They're not fully healthy. AJ Brown's banged up. Devonta Smith is banged up. So and Dallas Goedert, their tight end, is probably just coming back for this game. So once they get healthy, they're still running the ball and they still have all those offensive weapons. You can see them really get on a roll.
The identity of the Eagles is always going to center around just that absurd collection of talent on offense. But I do see signs of legitimate improvement from their defense. We were talking about them like they were one of the worst units in the league, and they were playing like it, to be fair, in the first few weeks of the season. They looked absolutely overmatched against Tampa Bay early on in the year. And I get that they haven't played a lot of impressive offenses, but Vic Fangio's got the secondary playing well. You're getting contributions from a guy like Nakobe Dean, who clinched the win last week. Again, is this me overestimating it because they've gotten to play the Jags and the Browns and the Giants, or do we see this group turning a corner as well?
I think it might have a little to do with the competition, but I think that, individually there are players playing better. You mentioned Nakobe Dean. The young secondary certainly is starting to shine. They're getting a bit more of a pass rush out of really everybody along their defensive front. What it looks to me, and they're not going to admit this, I don't think, but what looks to me is that maybe they were struggling adjusting to Vic Fangio's scheme early in the season, and that's why they were having the breakdowns and not getting the pressure that they needed. And players just seem to step slow. They're starting to get it, I think, and they're starting to play like we think they can play. And yeah, the competition definitely helps, but if they can start building their confidence against those teams that they should be, that's going to carry over, especially if they really are building their confidence in the defensive scheme and the play calls too.
I don't want to overlook the Cowboys because it is still it's a division rivalry. These are teams that are very familiar with each other. Spread's only 7 points in Dallas, which I find a little bit surprising given the way the Cowboys have defended the run. But what I was going to say is even if this game isn't, all that to watch, the next Thursday, Philadelphia versus Washington, maybe that'll be a really true test of where the Eagles stand and how much they've improved, because that sounds like a matchup worth getting really excited about, even if this Cowboys game isn't.
Yeah, that could be a huge game in the division. We're still. I think the Washington Commanders are still trying to get people to really believe in them, and me included in that, because they have played a relatively weak schedule. They've played well in the couple of games against tougher opponents. They're playing overall better on the offensive line, better on defense than I thought they'd be. And of course, Jaden Daniels is one of the best players in the league already, but the desire, I think, is for everybody to let's see what they do against the really good teams, and if they can stand up to the Philadelphia Eagles, beat them, assuming there's no setbacks this weekend, they could open up a 2-game lead in the division. That'll say a lot for them. And for the Eagles, it's the opposite. They want to remind everybody, hey, we're the power in this division right now, and they know the Commanders are good, and they know how good and dangerous Jaden Daniels can be. Might be one of the better teams they've faced so far this season. So that is an absolutely huge game to watch. A little bit more important than the Cowboys game, but bigger test than the Cowboys game, obviously. But that's the one I think everybody's looking forward to.
That's why this league is the best, Ralph, because nobody would have believed you in August if you'd said, the Cowboys the Eagles can't afford to fall asleep against the Cowboys because they got to prove themselves against those first place Commanders. What a fun story. I'm guessing we'll be checking in with you about that when the time comes. Always love talking to you, man. I'll catch up with you soon.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me on.